This tutorial is only vertical because it was filmed in a hurry as a bonus video due to the latest TikTok man news, and it was easier for me to just set up one camera. Tutorials moving forward here on YouTube will be filmed landscape. Today we're making these 3D cardboard Springtrap ears. Here's the templates you'll need. If you've seen my original 2D version of these ears over on TikTok, this template may look familiar. I used that original flat template to create all the layers to make this new 3D version. Here's the materials you'll need. Starting with the top of the ear, this part has 3 different layers. You'll need 2 cutouts of one of the layers. You could go without one of them, which is the very back layer if you don't care if the back has dimension or not, but I think the added detail really looks cool. You'll layer the pieces in order of A, B, A, C. That'll give the look of the metal endoskeleton poking out of the decaying suit. For the other parts, the first 3 layers will all be the same, and only the 4th layer will be different as the outer layer of the ear. Now, I made a mistake while layering mine, so I'll show you how to fix it in 2 different ways, and I'll let you decide which you like better. I put glue over the 3rd layer when all I needed to do was put it on the outside. So I put a piece of thin cardboard, like from a cereal box, and glued that on top, which will give you a smooth surface again, and then I just recut out the holes. This is a quick and easy fix that doesn't add really any noticeable thickness to the piece. With the broken ear, I forgot to even make an outline layer at all, since the original template didn't have the outline, which was a mistake, and I totally didn't remember that. You won't have that exact issue since I made sure to add that into this version of the template, but what I did was cut the middle out of the 4th layer and peeled that middle section off. This left a rough, uneven texture that I think really works for the old rotting mascot suit look. To replicate it, you can put a piece of cardboard over the glue and then rip it off. To close up the edges, I used strips of thin cardboard. I usually use masking tape for this, but I think that method doesn't look right for everything, so I wanted to try something new. I measured how thick the ears were and cut the strips out to fit. Mine were 5/8 of an inch, but depending upon the cardboard you're using, yours might be thinner or thicker, so make sure to measure yours. You only need to cover the edges where the suit is supposed to still be intact. I left the edges around the missing chunks and holes as they were because I thought it worked well with the design of having the mix of open and closed edges. When gluing on the cardboard strips, I found it's best to work in sections. I initially tried to do an entire strip at once each time, but some of the edges that gets really difficult with all the dips, so I made shorter strips for certain parts like shown, and this made it a lot easier. It's best to line up the edge of the strips to the front edge of the ear. That way, if there's any irregular spots, like I had some small gaps and some overlaps, those will be on the back and those can be easily covered up or fixed. Now I left the bottom of these pieces open because they won't be seen, but I found it's harder to glue them together like that. So I'd suggest closing up the ends too. Repeat for all 3 pieces. Now on the painting, I made 2 shades of this yellow-green color, one darker and one lighter. The camera for some reason makes these look just a bit more green than it appears in real life, and I also made a shade of gray. I suggest painting these layers in the opposite order that I did them. Start with the top layer and go down. The reason is you'll want to be painting the inside edges of the cardboard, as you'll see here. If you paint them in the order that I did, which was bottom to top, you'll have to repaint sections. Your lightest yellow-green is for the outer ear, sides, and back. The darker yellow-green is for the middle section, and the gray is for the metal piece on the top of the ear. Once your base colors are dry, you can do an optional step of some basic shading. For non-painters, I make this super simple by using cotton swabs. You can also use paintbrushes, but it's a bit harder if you're not used to doing shading. Something I would suggest is using normal cotton swabs. I have no idea who bought these weird ones that I have, but they do not work well. You can still use them, but they start falling apart sooner and they're harder to use. Now, take some paint from your yellow greens and your gray and put them each into a separate container, tray, or whatever, and add just a tiny bit of black to each one. You'll want shades that are just a little darker than your original ones. Now shade each layer with its corresponding darker shade. Use one end of the cotton swab to lightly dip into the paint, put it around the edges of the layers, working in small sections, and then use the other end to smudge the paint around like shown. You'll use each darker shade around the edges of the original color. Once done the initial shading, I did take the smudging end of the cotton swab that hardly had any paint on it and just kind of ran it over the pieces randomly, trying to keep the pieces from looking too clean and trying to mimic a somewhat dirty look. With all 3 sections painted, we'll move on to the wires. I suggest using red paper clips as it'll save you a whole entire step, but if you don't have any, you can paint them with certain kinds of paint or nail polish. I took 3 paper clips and unfolded them and then bent them in random directions. My paint dries flexible and seems to adhere to the paper clips pretty well. I've done this multiple times. Other paints, like crafts paints, will tend to dry hard and crumbly and they wouldn't work. That's when I would suggest nail polish if you don't know how your paint dries, just so you don't waste anything. Here I used a cup, swirled the paper clip around in the paint, and then tapped off the excess. I then sat them aside to dry. My paint peels easily off of plastic, so I just sat them on a piece of plastic, but if you're using nail polish or if you don't know if your paint will peel off of plastic or not, I would say stick the unpainted ends of the paperclip into something like styrofoam so that they can dry standing up. While those are drying, you'll want to assemble the bracket that will position the top ear to lean forward just a little bit. I suggest using large popsicle sticks and not these small ones. I didn't have any of the large ones left, so I had to make do. If using the large ones, you can assemble them like this. Here's a diagram and footage from previous tutorials showing you how I put them together. In the past tutorials, I used the small ones because those ears were lighter because they were only a single layer, but I wanted to use something wider with these ears to make sure everything will hold. Paint with the lightest yellow. Once that's set, you can glue the top part of the ear onto the top part of the bracket and then the bottom section onto the bottom. Going back to the wires, once they are dry, you can glue them in. You'll want one wire per section of ear like shown. To attach them, put a little bit of glue on the end of the paper clip and then just put them inside the openings of the cardboard. There should be openings just along the edge of all the different sides and you can just pop them right in there. Then all that's left to do is to glue them onto a headband. If your headband is glossy, you'll want to sand it up a little bit to rough up the surface so the glue sticks properly. You can also use a nail file if you don't have sandpaper, but remember to clean the dust off prior to gluing. I use heavy-duty hot glue, so that's all I needed to attach these to the headband. I don't have any other glue, so I assume other glue might not work as well here due to the weight. Heavy-duty hot glue is usually pretty easy to find, and if you have the ability, you can also find it pretty cheaply too. And now you're done. Hope you liked this bonus tutorial. While waiting for my next YouTube upload, you can check out more tutorials on my TikTok if you're new. Many more tutorials are on the way, and I'll see you guys next time.